Well, I didn't know it caused such a controversy either, Sean, until I just saw that headline flash on the screen, and I'm truly appalled. I saw a lot of Democrat commentators today spiraling out of control, grasping at straws, trying to find any excuse to criticize.
Karoline Leavitt finally wins $800 million lawsuit against Whoopi Goldberg and The View on live TV. Karoline Leavitt and The View became the center of a story that sounded too big to be true. Claims were flying, old comments were being replayed, and the number $800 million was suddenly at the heart of the conversation. But what really happened between Leavitt, Whoopi Goldberg, and the show? And did Karoline actually win an $800 million lawsuit on live television? In this script, we will follow the story from the heated television exchanges to the legal claims, the reactions from Megyn Kelly, and the bigger question of where political commentary ends and legal responsibility begins. The fight between Karoline Leavitt and The View gets bigger. The tension between Karoline Leavitt and the women of The View did not begin with one single moment. It grew through repeated political arguments, comments about Donald Trump, debates over the media, and disagreements about Leavitt's role in the administration. On one side was a young political figure who had quickly become one of the most recognizable voices defending the Trump administration.
Karoline Leavitt only secured her position because of her good looks.
I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump...
On the other side was a long-running daytime television program known for bringing several different political opinions to the same table. The problem was that their disagreements were no longer staying inside ordinary political debate. Every comment could become a headline, every clip could spread online, and every disagreement could turn into another battle between two very different audiences. Leavitt's critics questioned her political positions, while her supporters believed she represented a new generation of conservative voices. The View hosts, meanwhile, frequently discussed Trump, his administration, and Republican politics in highly critical terms. That created a natural conflict. When Leavitt spoke about the media, she often argued that news organizations should be held accountable when they presented claims as facts without proper evidence. That message became especially important because the transcript repeatedly returned to the idea that television personalities can face consequences when commentary crosses into factual accusations. The most important thing to understand, however, is that the transcript presents the $800 million lawsuit and victory as part of its dramatic narrative. It does not provide reliable evidence that Karoline Leavitt actually won an $800 million defamation judgment against Whoopi Goldberg or The View. That distinction matters. A viral video can present a courtroom victory as if it already happened. But dramatic narration is not the same thing as a verified court record. Still, the arguments and television clips described in the transcript provide plenty of material for a fresh story about the conflict between Leavitt and The View. One of the major moments discussed was Whoopi Goldberg's criticism of Leavitt's comments about wokeness.
I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said there will be no wokeness here.
Whoopi argued that earlier generations of women had fought for opportunities that younger women now benefited from. Her point was that dismissing those changes as wokeness ignored the history behind them. The discussion quickly became political because Leavitt represented a conservative administration that had made opposition to certain forms of progressive politics a major part of its message. That disagreement showed why the relationship between Leavitt and The View was so difficult. They were not simply debating a policy. They were debating the meaning of cultural change itself. For Whoopi and others on the show, some social changes represented progress that should be protected. For Leavitt and her supporters, some of those same changes represented a political ideology that had gone too far. Then came the accusations about the show's coverage of Trump and other Republican figures. The transcript highlights comments involving Melania Trump, Elon Musk, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, January 6th, and other political issues.
There's still places we haven't gone, and I'd like to hear about January 6th as well, because there's a huge story there that we haven't even delved into.
Some of these remarks were clearly presented as commentary or speculation, while others were discussed as examples of what critics considered irresponsible political talk. That distinction is important because defamation law generally does not treat every political insult or opinion as a factual statement. Saying someone is terrible, for example, is usually opinion. Claiming that a specific person committed a crime is different because it can potentially be tested as true or false. That is why the legal argument in the story depends on more than simply showing that the View hosts made comments that Leavitt or her supporters disliked. The transcript also brings Megyn Kelly into the story. Kelly has been one of the strongest critics of The View, and her commentary is used throughout the source material as a reaction to the show's political discussions. She argues that the hosts have repeatedly made claims that deserve stronger scrutiny. Her criticism gives the story another layer, because Kelly is not simply watching the dispute from the outside. She has her own history in political media and has frequently criticized mainstream television coverage. The result is a three-way media conflict. Leavitt, representing the political side, The View, representing daytime television commentary, and Kelly, acting as an outside critic examining the fight. Each side has a different audience, and each audience interprets the same television clips differently. But the biggest claim remains the $800 million figure. The transcript treats that number as a final court judgment and builds an entire story around it. It describes executives panicking, legal teams changing their practices, advertising relationships disappearing, and the television industry supposedly learning a huge lesson. Those details create a powerful narrative, but they should not be presented as established facts without independent verification. What can be established from the transcript is that there was intense criticism surrounding The View, that the program has issued legal notes and corrections in various situations, and that political commentators such as Megyn Kelly have repeatedly attacked the show's handling of political stories. The larger lesson is not necessarily that one woman walked into court and collected $800 million. The more useful question is why a television program can become so vulnerable when political commentary, speculation, and factual reporting begin to overlap. That is where the Leavitt story becomes bigger than one television argument. It becomes a debate about responsibility. When millions of people watch a statement on television, do they understand it as someone's opinion, or do they believe it is a verified fact? When a host makes a strong accusation, should the network be responsible for proving it? And when a political figure is criticized on national television, what legal options are actually available? Those questions explain why the Leavitt versus The View story attracted so much attention. The personalities made it entertaining, but the legal questions made it serious. Megyn Kelly, Whoopi Goldberg, and the battle over what was said on television. As the dispute grew, Megyn Kelly became one of the loudest voices attacking The View. Her argument was simple.
The View and Whoopi Goldberg and her take on why we are now involved in the Iran war. Believe it or not, it's going to tie Nancy Guthrie and Iran together.
Political television should not receive a free pass simply because the comments are made during a talk show. In Kelly's view, hosts have influence, audiences trust what they hear, and repeated political claims should be examined carefully. That criticism was especially strong when the discussion involved Donald Trump and his administration. The transcript highlights several examples where The View hosts discussed Trump, Melania Trump, Elon Musk, January 6th, and other political subjects. Some of those discussions were sarcastic. Some were clearly opinionated. Others involved speculation about motives or intentions. Kelly's broader criticism was that the line between those categories could become unclear. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Ana Navarro, and other hosts have different political styles, but the program often operates through conversation and disagreement. That format is part of its appeal. One person makes a claim, another challenges it, another adds a joke, and the discussion moves forward. For viewers who agree with the hosts, the format can feel like a group of people saying what they are thinking. For viewers who disagree, the same format can look like several people reinforcing one political narrative. Karoline Leavitt entered that environment from a completely different position. As a government spokesperson and political communicator, her public statements are designed to defend an administration and respond to criticism. She does not have the luxury of treating every controversy as entertainment. Her public role means that attacks against her can become part of a larger political fight. That is why the conflict with The View became so useful for both sides. Leavitt could point to the program as an example of what she considered biased mainstream media. The show could portray Leavitt as part of a political movement that challenged progressive ideas. Both sides could speak to their own audiences, and every new argument created another round of online clips. The transcript also refers to comments about Leavitt's age and appearance. One clip discusses her appointment while focusing on her looks, rather than simply her political qualifications. That kind of commentary became another issue for her supporters. They argued that young women in politics should be judged by what they say and do, rather than by their appearance. This point connected with a larger argument about women in public life. The View hosts have often spoken about the barriers women faced in politics, business, and media. Leavitt's supporters responded that conservative women should receive the same respect even when they hold political beliefs that progressives dislike. That disagreement created an interesting contradiction. Both sides claimed to defend women's ability to participate in public life.
This country so well, and very importantly, she's been a role model to millions and millions of young women all across this country.
But they disagreed strongly about which women were being treated fairly. Then the conversation moved back toward legal responsibility. The source transcript describes a supposed discovery process in which internal communications, production notes, and planning documents revealed that The View had deliberately shaped stories around ratings rather than accuracy. But this is one of the areas where the script needs caution. The transcript does not provide court documents, case numbers, judicial findings, or independently verified evidence establishing those claims. They are presented as part of the video's storyline. That does not mean the underlying discussion about media responsibility is meaningless. It means the claim should be separated from the verified reality. A responsible script can still examine the controversy without telling viewers that an $800 million judgment definitely occurred when there is no supporting evidence in the supplied material. The same applies to the claim that the network paid $800 million. That number is central to the title, but a huge financial judgment of that size would normally generate substantial public legal and financial records. It would also be major national news. A story involving an $800 million defamation judgment against a major television network would not remain limited to a dramatic YouTube narrative. The transcript also mentions ABC's earlier legal troubles and a $15 million settlement related to a separate defamation case. That is a real-world type of event that can help explain why legal accuracy matters in television. But one case should not automatically be treated as proof of another. A previous settlement involving one person or program does not establish that Leavitt won a separate $800 million case. This is where the story becomes more interesting than the original sensational headline. Instead of simply saying that Leavitt destroyed The View, we can ask, what happens when political commentary becomes part of a legal dispute? Television hosts have broad freedom to express political opinions. They can criticize politicians. They can make jokes. They can discuss controversial topics. They can even make statements that viewers consider offensive. The legal question becomes much narrower when a statement is presented as a factual accusation and causes measurable harm. That difference is easy to miss in a viral clip. A 30-second video can remove the context around a statement. A sarcastic comment can look like a serious allegation. A joke can be presented as evidence of political bias. And once millions of people watch the clip, the original context may be impossible to recover. That is why media organizations have legal departments. Before a serious accusation is broadcast, lawyers may examine the wording, the evidence, and the potential consequences. A careless statement can create years of legal problems, even if the original segment lasted only a few minutes. Megyn Kelly's criticism of The View therefore fits into a larger debate that has existed for years. Should political talk shows be held to the same standards as traditional news programs? There is no simple answer. A talk show is not structured like a newspaper investigation. Hosts are expected to give opinions. Viewers know they are watching commentary. But that does not mean factual claims become meaningless simply because they are delivered from a studio table. The strongest version of the Leavitt story is therefore not that she magically won $800 million on live television. The stronger story is about how political media can create conflicts that become larger than the original argument. A comment begins as a joke, becomes a viral clip, turns into a political talking point, and eventually becomes part of a much bigger argument about credibility. And that is exactly what happened with the relationship between Leavitt and The View. Every side had something to prove. Leavitt wanted to show that conservative voices would not simply accept attacks from mainstream television. The View wanted to defend its right to criticize political leaders. Megyn Kelly wanted to show that the show's approach deserved scrutiny. The audience was left in the middle, watching the fight grow. The $800 million claim and the real lesson behind the controversy. By the final part of the story, the $800 million figure had become more than a number. It became the symbol of the entire controversy. The transcript describes it as a devastating legal judgment that supposedly forced television executives to reconsider how they operated. It describes legal reviews becoming stricter, production teams becoming more careful, and hosts becoming more cautious with their language. That would certainly be a major change if it happened. But again, the supplied transcript does not establish that Karoline Leavitt actually received an $800 million judgment against Whoopi Goldberg and The View. The safest way to tell this story is to make that distinction clear while still examining the claims that made the controversy go viral. The reason the headline is so powerful is obvious. It combines politics, television, celebrity, money, and conflict in one sentence. Karoline Leavitt wins $800 million against Whoopi Goldberg, immediately creates an image of a dramatic courtroom victory. Adding "on live TV" makes the story sound even bigger. But sensational headlines often compress complicated events into a simple story. The audience sees a winner and a loser. Real legal disputes are rarely that simple. There are complaints, motions, evidence, hearings, settlements, appeals, and legal standards that must be met. Defamation cases can be particularly complicated when public figures are involved. A public official or public figure generally faces a higher burden when claiming that criticism was defamatory. The exact legal standard depends on the circumstances, the statement, the speaker, and the jurisdiction. That makes the alleged Leavitt case important to discuss carefully. If such a judgment truly occurred, there would be an extensive record behind it. If it did not, then repeating the claim as fact would create the very problem the story itself claims to criticize, presenting an unverified statement as established truth. And that is the central irony. The entire narrative is built around the idea that media personalities should verify what they say. Yet the same principle must apply to the people telling the story about them. That does not mean ignoring the clips from The View. Those clips are still important because they show the tone of the political discussion. Whoopi's comments about wokeness show one side of the cultural argument.
Talk about it, and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
Comments about Trump and other Republicans show the show's often critical approach. Megyn Kelly's reactions show how strongly some conservative commentators oppose that approach. Leavitt's own public role provides the other side. She has consistently presented herself as someone willing to confront media organizations and challenge narratives she considers unfair. Her appeal among supporters comes partly from that willingness to fight publicly rather than quietly accept criticism. This explains why her name became so closely connected with stories about media conflict. She represents a younger political generation that understands how quickly television clips can spread through social media. A single sentence can become a headline within minutes. A short response can reach millions of people without traditional news coverage. That has changed political communication. In the past, a television interview might disappear after it aired. Today, every moment can be recorded, clipped, reposted, analyzed, and turned into a political weapon. A comment made at 10 a.m. can become a viral video by lunchtime. By evening, people who never watched the original program may have strong opinions about what happened. That environment creates pressure on everyone. Politicians must be careful, because their words can be taken out of context. Hosts must be careful, because their comments can be replayed indefinitely. Networks must be careful, because legal complaints can develop long after the original broadcast. The Leavitt and View controversy is therefore part of a much bigger change in political media. The old model was simple. Television hosts spoke, viewers watched, and the program moved on. The new model is continuous. The broadcast is only the beginning. Social media users dissect the comments. Supporters defend the speaker. Critics attack them. Influencers create reaction videos. Political campaigns use the clips. And eventually, the original statement becomes almost impossible to separate from the online argument surrounding it. That is why Megyn Kelly's involvement matters. Her commentary shows how one media personality can react to another media platform and create an entirely separate audience conversation. The original View segment becomes one piece of a much larger media cycle. The same cycle benefits Leavitt. Every criticism can become another opportunity to respond. Every negative segment can become evidence for supporters who already believe the mainstream media is hostile toward conservatives. And every response can increase her visibility. The controversy also reveals something about The View. The program's strength is its personalities. Viewers tune in because they know the hosts will disagree, argue, joke, and sometimes become emotional. But that same strength can become a weakness when a discussion involves sensitive factual claims. The louder the debate becomes, the harder it is to separate information from opinion. That does not mean political discussion should become boring. It means the strongest commentators should be able to distinguish between saying, "I disagree with this politician," and saying, "This politician did something specific and provably false." The first is political opinion. The second can create legal consequences if it is false and damaging. That is the real lesson behind the $800 million story. Whether the number came from a real judgment, a fictionalized narrative, or a misleading presentation, the story became popular because people already wanted to believe it. Supporters of Leavitt wanted to see her defeat a media institution they distrust. Critics of Leavitt could view the story as another example of political propaganda. The headline worked because it was designed to trigger an emotional response before the audience asked for evidence. And that is why viewers should slow down. Before believing that someone won an enormous lawsuit, look for the court record. Before believing that a television host was found legally responsible for defamation, look for the actual case. Before believing that a network lost hundreds of millions of dollars, Look for reliable reporting from established news organizations and legal sources. The irony is that this approach does not weaken the story. It makes it stronger. Karoline Leavitt's rise, her clashes with the media,
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt taking some heat online for bashing Gen Z alongside Jesse Waters. Take a look.
Whoopi Goldberg's political commentary, and Megyn Kelly's criticism are already interesting subjects. They do not need an invented courtroom victory to become compelling. The real story is the battle over credibility. Who gets to define the truth? A politician, a television host, a journalist, a commentator, or the evidence itself? That question will continue to matter long after one viral video disappears. The Karoline Leavitt versus The View controversy shows how quickly political arguments can turn into national media battles. The $800 million lawsuit claim should be treated carefully unless supported by an actual court record. But the larger debate over television commentary, political bias, and responsibility is very real. Whoopi Goldberg and the other hosts have the right to express political opinions, while Leavitt and her supporters have the right to challenge statements they believe are unfair. The important thing is knowing where opinion ends and fact begins. So what do you think? Should political talk shows face stronger consequences when their claims cross the line? If you enjoyed this story, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more political stories and media controversies.